Director Kalen Var paced the pristine observation deck, overlooking the expansive Zenith Interstellar Zoo, her scaled Lorian hands clasped tightly behind her back. 6 years of meticulous management had earned the Zenith its reputation as the most prestigious zoological garden in the galaxy. Each biosphere was an engineering marvel, perfect replications of natural environments from hundreds of worlds, maintained with obsessive precision. Yet it was the apex symbiosis habitat that simultaneously brought her the most pride and the most scrutiny. Even now, she could see a small cluster of humans moving comfortably among the imposing Kthar razor claws. The desert predator's iridescent scales shimmered in the artificial sunlight as they engaged in what appeared to be a complex game of strategy with their human companions. Her contemplation was interrupted by the whirring of the deck's entry portal. Inspector Byrock's arrival was precisely on time. Zirconians were nothing if not punctual. The tall, rigidly postured official strode onto the deck, formal robes rustling with each deliberate step. His facial ridges were set in what Kalen recognized as the Zirconian expression of severe disapproval. Director Var, Byrock's voice was as dry as the desert biosphere below. I trust you understand the gravity of this inspection. The Galactic Oversight Council has received disturbing anonymous reports regarding your unconventional arrangements here. Kalen inclined her head respectfully. Inspector, I welcome your thoroughness. The Zenith has nothing to hide. Nothing. Byrock's upper eye ridge twitched slightly. Then perhaps you can explain why sentient beings, humans, are being kept in an enclosure with apex predators known for their hunting prowess and territorial aggression. Without waiting for her response, he moved to the viewing panel, gesturing sharply at the scene below. The Kthar razorclaw has been classified as a Category 1 predator species. Their neural toxins can paralyze creatures 3 times their size. Their hunting intelligence is renowned across 17 star systems, and you have placed vulnerable humans in their midst. This violates every established safety protocol in the Unified Zoological Code. Kalen stepped forward, activating a holographic display between them. Inspector, if I may explain the rationale behind what I assure you is a carefully considered arrangement. Byrock's posture stiffened further, but he nodded curtly. The Kthar razorclaws present a unique challenge in captivity, Kalen began, bringing up detailed behavioral data. Their intelligence and mild telepathic abilities make them susceptible to severe psychological distress when deprived of complex social interaction and mental stimulation. Early attempts to house them using only automated systems and drones resulted in catastrophic outcomes. The display shifted to show footage of Kthar exhibiting self-destructive behaviors, one repeatedly slamming itself against a barrier until its scales cracked and bled, another becoming catatonic, refusing food until near death. We tried everything conventional, Kalen continued. Environmental enrichment, holographic prey, simulations, interactive puzzles. Nothing provided the level of engagement they required. They continued to deteriorate. And somehow humans became your solution? Byrock's tone was incredulous. Converting an endangered species exhibit into some kind of interspecies social experiment? It began quite accidentally, Kalen admitted. Dr. Aristhorn, a xenoethologist who specialized in predator-prey dynamics, was conducting observational research from what we believed was a secure, camouflage blind within the habitat. A dust storm damaged the camouflage field, exposing Dr. Thorne's presence. She paused, bringing up new footage. We were prepared for disaster, but what happened instead was this. The recording showed a startled human researcher suddenly visible to 3 Kthar. Rather than attacking, the predators approached cautiously, displaying a communication pattern of head tilts and subtle telepathic probing that wasn't aggressive but curious. Over the subsequent hours, a primitive but definite communication developed. Humans, with their empathy, problem-solving flexibility, and need for purpose, form an unexpected symbiotic bond with the Kthar. They engage in complex nonverbal communication, cooperative activities, and what we've come to call intelligence games that provide the Cthar with the mental stimulation they desperately need. Byrock snorted. A fascinating anecdote, Director, but it hardly justifies putting sentient beings at such risk. No matter how seemingly cordial this relationship appears, the Cthar remain predators by nature. That's exactly why the humans are safer with them than without them, Kalen said firmly. Preposterous. The desert biosphere contains other dangers beyond the Cthar. Themselves, Kalen explained, adjusting the display to reveal microscopic imagery. Neurotropic fungal spores float in the air cyclically, releasing in patterns we cannot fully predict. Microdust storms can damage life support equipment without warning. The Cthar, with their superior senses, can detect these dangers well in advance. The display shifted to show a Cthar suddenly alert, guiding a human companion away from an area moments before a plume of nearly invisible spores erupted from sand. Their territorial protective instincts extend to the humans they've bonded with, leading them to sheltered caves or windbreak areas when danger approaches. In essence, Inspector, remaining with the Cthar, is actually the safest place for humans within this environment. Byrock's expression had not softened. Director Var, I've heard enough. This sounds like bureaucratic justification for cost-cutting safety measures, or worse, covering up some horrific truth. The predatory nature of the Cthar cannot be denied, nor can the fragility of humans. I will require a full, personal inspection of this apex symbiosis habitat immediately. Kayla nodded, having expected this reaction. Of course, Inspector. I'll arrange it at once. The lift tube descended smoothly into the acclimatization chamber adjacent to the apex symbiosis habitat. Inspector Byrock had insisted on bringing a comprehensive array of recording devices and sensors, which now hovered around him like mechanical insects. These will capture everything, he stated flatly. Behavioral nuances, pheromone releases, subtle telepathic emanations. Nothing will escape documentation. Kalen nodded, inputting the final sequence to open the habitat access. I should warn you, Inspector, the Cthar are sensitive to unknown presences. They may seem agitated initially, but Dr. Thorne will help facilitate the introduction. The heavy doors slid open, revealing the stark beauty of the recreated desert landscape. Heat shimmered above red-gold sands, punctuated by jagged rock formations and sparse, tough vegetation. In the near distance, a cluster of domed structures blended organically with the environment, the research outpost where the humans lived. A figure approached across the sand, tall for a human, with sun-darkened skin and movements that carried a peculiar grace. Dr. Eris Thorne wore lightweight, clothing adapted for the heat, with various small devices attached to a utility belt. Most striking was the complete lack of any visible weapons or defensive equipment. Inspector Byrock, Thorne extended a hand in greeting, then smoothly transitioned to a formal Zirconian bow when the official made no move to reciprocate the human gesture. Welcome to our home. Your prison, you mean, Byrock replied coldly. Or perhaps your sacrifice altar. Thorne's expression remained pleasant. I understand your concerns. They mirror those of everyone who first hears of our arrangement. Perhaps you'd like to observe our daily routines? The Cthar are currently gathered at the Eastern Rock Formation for their midday communal rest. As they walked, Byrock's scanning devices buzzed and whirred, taking readings of everything. Thorne provided a running commentary on the habitat and the work being done, occasionally pausing to point out environmental features of interest. You've adapted well to living as prey, Byrock commented acerbically. Thorne smiled. That's where the fundamental misunderstanding lies, Inspector. We don't live as prey here. The relationship is far more complex. They crested a small rise, and there, nestled among shadowed rock recesses, lay the Cthar. 7 massive predators, each the size of a small ground transport, their scale bodies a mesmerizing pattern of russet and gold that blended perfectly with the surroundings. Curved claws, easily as long as a human forearm, gleamed wickedly even in shadow. For humans sat among them, seemingly engaged in arranging small colored stones on a large flat rock. One of the Kthar observed intently, occasionally using its foreleg to delicately move a stone, eliciting animated discussion from the humans. That's a cognitive mapping exercise, Thorne explained. The Kthar are demonstrating how they perceive spatial relationships across short distances. It helps us understand their hunting strategies and territorial designations, and provides them with intelligence about human thinking patterns, Byrok muttered darkly. Before Thorne could respond, one of the largest Kthar raised its wedge-shaped head, nostrils flaring. With surprising speed for its size, it rose and moved directly toward their position, causing Byrok to step back instinctively. "Steady," Thorne said softly. "This is Kralik, the dominant male of the group. He sensed your presence and is coming to investigate." The massive predator stopped a few meters away, its vertical pupils dilating as it studied Byrok. The inspector's devices swarmed forward automatically, taking readings, and the Kthar's posture immediately changed, back arching, a low rumble emanating from its throat. "Call off your devices," Thorne said urgently. "They're interpreting them as threats." "I will not compromise this inspection," Byrok insisted, though his voice had risen slightly in pitch. The Kthar's rumble intensified, and subtle waves of telepathic interference began to create static in the nearby devices. Thorne stepped forward, placing himself between Byrok and the increasingly agitated predator. "Kralik." Thorne addressed the creature directly, making a complex series of hand gestures while projecting an air of calm confidence. "This visitor means no harm. The flying things are part of him, like your scales are part of you." The Kthar's head tilted, its rumble subsiding slightly. With deliberate movements, it circled around them, keeping a wary eye on the devices but no longer displaying aggression. "Remarkable," Kalen murmured. "The level of communication has developed significantly since my last visit." Thorne nodded. "We've established over 300 distinct gestures that, combined with emotional projections and simple telepathic impressions, allow for quite sophisticated exchanges." As if to demonstrate, Kralik made a sharp clicking sound, followed by a series of head movements. Two other Kthar immediately rose and positioned themselves at strategic points around the group. "What's happening?" Byrok demanded, his hand moving to an emergency beacon on his belt. "Standard protective formation," Thorne explained calmly. "Kralik is uncertain about you, so he's established a cautious perimeter. It's actually a good sign. He's treating you as a potential new pack member rather than a threat to be eliminated." Byrok did not appear reassured. "I want to see the human living quarters immediately." The tour continued with palpable tension. The human quarters proved to be surprisingly comfortable, a blend of advanced technology and adaptation to the desert environment. Solar collection arrays powered environmental systems, water recyclers, and communication equipment. Living spaces were Spartan but adequate, with personal touches evident in each dwelling. 6 humans currently reside here permanently, Thorne explained. Myself, 2 xenobiologists, a behavioral psychologist, a communication specialist, and a medical doctor. We rotate off-station for 2 weeks every 6 months, but most of us find we miss the Kthar during our absence. Stockholm Syndrome, Biruk Mutterid. Thorne's expression hardened momentarily. "Inspector, I assure you, we are here by choice. The insights we've gained into interspecies communication and cooperative dynamics have advanced our understanding exponentially. Your scientific curiosity doesn't justify the risk," Byrok countered, his devices scanning every corner of the dwelling. "Perhaps a demonstration would be more convincing than our assurances," Kalen suggested. "With proper safety protocols, of course." Byrok's eye ridges rose. "What kind of demonstration?" "A controlled release of the fungal spores I mentioned earlier," Kalen proposed. "At minimal concentration, completely safe but sufficient to trigger the Kthar's protective responses. You want to deliberately expose humans to neural toxins?" Byrok's voice rose in pitch again. "The concentration would be well below harmful levels," Thorne assured him. "We experience these naturally several times each month." The point is to show you how the Kthar respond. After much argument and the signing of multiple liability waivers, Byrock reluctantly agreed. From a protected observation blind, they watched as Kalen activated a small environmental control panel, releasing a barely visible mist into a section of the habitat where two humans were conducting soil samples, with Kthar lounging nearby. The effect was immediate. Before the monitoring equipment had even registered the presence of spores, the Kthar were alert, their postures changing dramatically. One gave a sharp, distinctive cry, and both humans immediately ceased their work. Without apparent fear or panic, they followed the now-moving Kthar toward a rock overhang as the barely perceptible cloud drifted in their previous location. The warning vocalization translates roughly to air danger, Thorne explained. They could detect the spores at concentrations 1,000th of what our equipment can register. Byrock watched silently, his expression unreadable. When the demonstration ended, he insisted on interviewing other zoo staff, particularly those who worked in adjacent departments or had previously worked with the Kthar. These conversations only deepened his suspicions. Some staff members seemed genuinely enthusiastic about the program, but others appeared nervous, giving positive but vague answers or quietly expressing discomfort with the arrangement. One maintenance technician mentioned hearing strange sounds at night from the habitat, though he couldn't elaborate when pressed. Your staff hardly seems unified in their support of this experiment, Byrock observed as they returned to the administrative section. Innovation often faces resistance, Kalen replied evenly, especially when it challenges established paradigms. Byrock accessed old safety reports on his portable terminal. Before the humans were introduced, there were 17 incidents involving Kthar aggression toward maintenance drones and 3 cases of them attempting to breach containment barriers. Your own records contradict your claims of their docility. Not docility, Kalen corrected. Selective cooperation based on mutual benefit. The earlier incidents occurred precisely because the Kthar lacked appropriate stimulation and social interaction. Byrock made a dismissive gesture. I've seen enough for today. Tomorrow, I'll be conducting a budget and resource allocation review. This program of yours must be draining resources from legitimate safety measures elsewhere. Kalen felt a chill at his words, but maintained her professional demeanor. Of course, Inspector. All records will be at your disposal. The following morning found Byrock poring over financial records with ruthless efficiency, questioning every allocation and expenditure related to the apex symbiosis habitat. His suspicions had shifted from outright safety concerns to allegations of financial impropriety. The environmental control systems in the tropical rainforest biosphere were scheduled for an upgrade 2 cycles ago, he noted, highlighting a section of the maintenance log. Yet the funding was reallocated to enhanced communications equipment for the Human Kthar project. Care to explain? Kalen sighed. The existing systems were functioning within acceptable parameters. The upgrade was postponed, not canceled, and is scheduled for next quarter. Functioning within acceptable parameters is bureaucratic language for potential disaster waiting to happen, Byrock countered. I want to inspect this rainforest biosphere immediately. The tropical rainforest biosphere was an impressive sight, a cathedral of greens stretching upward into artificial mist. Massive trees supported diverse life forms from 6 different planets, all coexisting in carefully maintained equilibrium. The air was heavy with moisture and the rich scents of vegetation and loamy soil. The environmental control for this habitat are particularly complex, Kalen explained as they walked along a maintenance gantry suspended above the canopy. Temperature, humidity, and atmospheric composition must be constantly adjusted to accommodate the diverse species. Byrock was barely listening, his attention focused on his scanning devices. These regulators are showing significant wear patterns. Microfractures in the primary coolant housings. Unacceptable. All within engineering tolerances, Kalen insisted. Our chief engineer certified them just last month. Before Byrock could respond, a sharp alarm sounded from his scanner. At the same moment, a subtle vibration ran through the gantry beneath their feet. What's happening? He demanded, his devices swarming in agitated patterns. Kalen was already accessing the habitat's control systems through her wrist terminal. Her scales paled visibly as she read the incoming data. Primary environmental regulator failure in Section 12. Backup systems not responding. This shouldn't be possible. Both systems have independent failsafes. A mechanical groan echoed through the vast space, followed by a hissing sound from somewhere below. Kalen's expression shifted from concern to alarm. Emergency protocols initiated, she announced, her voice shifting to the clear, authoritative tone of crisis management. All personnel evacuate Biosphere 7 immediately. Containment procedures Alpha 3 in effect. What exactly is being contained? Byrock demanded as emergency lighting activated around them. The regulator failure has disrupted the pheromone suppression system for the Neuroptera hive, Kalen explained tersely, already moving toward the nearest exit. They're colonial insects from Proxima Vega 4, normally docile pollinators, but during certain cycles. A cloud of iridescent insects erupted from the undergrowth below, their tiny bodies catching the light like animated jewels. Beautiful, until one noticed the needle-sharp proboscises extending from their heads. They enter a reproductive frenzy that induces hyperaggression, Kalen finished, breaking into a run. They barely reached the sealed emergency exit before the insect cloud engulfed the gantry behind them. Through the transparent aluminum door, they watched as the swarm grew exponentially, more and more insects pouring from hidden nests throughout the biosphere. Inside the emergency control center, chaos reigned. Technical staff frantically worked controls while security personnel coordinated evacuation procedures. Status displays showed the rapidly deteriorating situation. The insect swarm had already breached 3 internal barriers and was spreading through maintenance corridors. The automated defense systems? Byrock questioned, watching the displays with growing horror. Engaging but overwhelmed, a harried technician reported. The swarm's numbers are too great, and they're small enough to evade most of the countermeasures. Projection? Kalen asked tersely. The chief of security, a gray-faced Relaxian, brought up a simulation. At current spread rates, they'll reach public areas within 20 minutes. Complete infestation of all connected biospheres within 2 hours. Including the apex symbiosis habitat, Kalen noted, her eyes fixed on the spreading red indicators on the map. The toxic stingers of the Neuroptera cause paralysis followed by a slow, excruciating breakdown of neural tissue, the security chief continued. Our standard security teams aren't equipped to handle this scale of biological threat. Byrock, his earlier antagonism momentarily forgotten in the face of imminent disaster, turned accusingly to Kalen. This is precisely the result of negligent maintenance protocols. Your misallocation of resources has endangered thousands of lives. Kalen ignored the accusation, her mind racing through options. The standard protocols weren't working. The automated systems were failing. What resource remained that could possibly? Her eyes widened as realization struck. She activated her communication link. Give me Dr. Thorne. Immediately. Thorne's face appeared on the main display, concern evident. Director VAR, we're picking up unusual activity in the adjacent systems. Is everything? Dr. Thorne, listen carefully, Kalen interrupted. We have a new Neuroptera swarm breakout in Biosphere 7. Containment has failed. The swarm is spreading through maintenance corridors and will reach your habitat within 30 minutes. Thorne's expression grew grave. The Kthar are already agitated. They sense something wrong in the air circulation system. That's why I'm contacting you, Kalen said, lowering her voice slightly. The standard countermeasures are ineffective against the swarm's numbers and size. But the Kthar, understanding dawned on Thorne's face. Their reflexes, their hunting capabilities, and their resistance to the Neuroptera venom due to their scaled hides and different neurochemistry. Exactly, Kalen confirmed. But it would mean opening the habitat, allowing Kthar human teams into the maintenance corridors to hunt down and eliminate the swarm. Byrock's voice rose in outrage behind her. Absolutely not. You cannot seriously be proposing to release apex predators into the general facility. This is madness. Thorn's image flickered as the communication system suffered interference from the spreading chaos. The Cthar can sense the threat. They're becoming increasingly protective of their territory, which now includes us. I believe they would engage the threat effectively under our guidance. Director VAR. Byrock stepped forward, his formal demeanor cracking under stress. As a representative of the Galactic Oversight Council, I expressly forbid this action. I will have you immediately removed from authority and detained if you proceed. The security team exchanged uncertain glances. Other department heads present looked equally torn, fear of the consequences, both from the swarm and from regulatory repercussions, evident on their faces. Kaylin stood tall, her decision crystallizing in the face of certain disaster. Open a full communication channel to the Apex Symbiosis habitat. Thorn's image expanded, now showing the interior of the human command center within the habitat. Behind him, the other 5 humans were preparing equipment, lightweight protective gear, communication devices, and scanning tools. In the background, through large windows, several Cthar could be seen moving with obvious agitation. Dr. Thorn, Kaylin addressed him formally, please present your tactical assessment and plan. Thorn nodded, immediately shifting to a precise, professional tone. The Cthar's telepathic abilities will allow for real-time coordination between teams. We'll utilize their superior senses to track and locate swarm concentrations that our technology cannot detect precisely. Their natural weapons, claws, teeth, and their mild defensive acid secretions are ideally suited for eliminating the Neuroptera. He activated a holographic display showing the maintenance corridor layout. We propose 3 teams, each consisting of 2 humans and 2 Cthar. Humans will provide tactical coordination, technological support, and help navigate the facility systems. The Cthar will serve as the primary offensive force. And how will you prevent the Cthar from attacking other life forms they encounter? Byrock demanded. The Cthar distinguish threats based on a complex set of sensory inputs, Thorn explained. Under our guidance, they recognize non-threatening entities and will prioritize the actual threat, in this case, the Neuroptera swarm. Additionally, their territorial protection instinct now extends to the facility they consider an extension of their habitat. The security chief spoke up. Standard protocols are failing. Evacuation cannot be completed in time. We need an alternative solution. Kaylin looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each department head. The choice is clear. We either try something unprecedented or we face certain catastrophe. She turned back to the screen. Dr. Thorn, deploy your teams. Security will coordinate access and provide facility support. Byrock stepped forward. Director VAR, I am logging a formal protest and will be contacting the council directly. An explosion shook the control room as a section of environmental systems overloaded under the strain of the emergency measures. Alarms blared with renewed urgency. Contact whoever you wish, Inspector, Kaylin replied calmly, but do it from emergency shelter. Right now, we have lives to save. The next hour unfolded in a series of tense, adrenaline-fueled moments. The habitat doors opened, releasing the carefully coordinated human Kthar teams into the facility's service corridors. Each team moved with surprising synchronicity. Humans equipped with tactical gear, masks to filter the air, short-range scanners, and communication devices. Cthar moving with fluid grace, their senses alert to the smallest changes in air currents or scent traces. From the emergency command center, now relocated to a secure section, Kaylin, Byrock, and the senior staff monitored the operation through security cameras and communication feeds. The footage was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. In one corridor, a dense cloud of Neuroptera swarmed toward a vulnerable evacuation point. Before security could even report the threat, a Cthar team intercepted it. The massive predators moved with impossible speed for their size, claws slashing through the air with surgical precision, their scaled bodies impervious to the stinging attacks that would have incapacitated any unprotected staff. The humans with them coordinated their movements, using portable sonic disruptors to herd the insects into concentrated areas where the Kthar could dispatch them most efficiently. Remarkable coordination, the security chief murmured, watching the feeds. They're moving like a single organism. Another feed showed a different team encountering maintenance staff trapped by the swarm. The Kthar positioned themselves between the staff and the approaching insects, creating a protective formation while the humans in the team helped the frightened workers to safety. "They're protecting them," Byrock said, his voice hollow with disbelief. As Dr. Thorne explained, Kalen replied, not taking her eyes from the displays. The Kthar's territorial instincts now extend to the facility and its inhabitants. The crisis reached its peak when the Central Environmental Control Hub, the heart of the zoo's life support systems, came under massive attack. Thousands of Neuroptera had gathered there, drawn to the warmth and electromagnetic fields of the critical equipment. If those systems fail, we lose life support to 17 biospheres, a technician reported frantically. Over 3,000 species would be at risk. On the display, they watched as all three Kthar teams converged on the hub, led by Dr. Thorne himself. What followed was a coordinated assault that demonstrated intelligence and strategy far beyond mere animal instinct. The Kthar positioned themselves at critical junctures, using their bodies to channel the swarm's movement, while humans operated emergency systems to create airflow patterns that further concentrated the insects. "They're hurting them," the security chief realized aloud, using the ventilation systems to funnel them toward. A massive Kthar, Kralik, the dominant male, positioned himself at the convergence point, his body seeming to shimmer oddly. As the concentrated swarm approached, he released a fine mist from specialized glands along his flanks, a defensive mechanism normally used to deter larger predators on his native world. The chemical compound had a devastating effect on the neurologically simple insects, causing near-instant paralysis. Within minutes, the threat to the environmental hub was neutralized. Similar scenes played out across the facility as the teams systematically eliminated swarm concentrations. 2 hours later, sensors confirmed what seemed impossible. The Neuroptera outbreak had been completely contained. The cost was not zero. Several staff members had suffered stings before evacuation and were receiving medical treatment. One section of the tropical biosphere had suffered significant damage from systems failures. 2 Kthar had sustained minor injuries from repeated stings to less protected areas, though their thick hides had prevented serious harm. But the catastrophic loss of life that had seemed inevitable had been averted. In the main control center, now restored to functionality, Kalen faced Inspector Byrock across the central holographic display. The Zirconian official's normally rigid posture showed subtle signs of fatigue and strain. The arrogance and contempt that had colored his earlier interactions had been replaced by something more complex. Reluctant acknowledgement mingled with lingering suspicion. "The security footage and damage reports tell a clear story," Kalen said quietly. "Standard protocols failed. Automated systems were insufficient. Without the Kthar human teams, we would be counting casualties in the hundreds, possibly thousands." Byrock studied the data scrolling before him. Efficiency metrics, response times, threat elimination rates. The numbers were undeniable. The symbiosis between humans and Kthar proved unexpectedly effective, he admitted grudgingly. Their coordination far exceeded anything our predictive models would have suggested possible. The relationship is not simply about keeping the Kthar psychologically stable, Kalen explained. It's a genuine partnership that benefits both species and, as we've now demonstrated, can serve as an invaluable security asset, a flexible, adaptive defense system that no technology can match. Byrock's gaze shifted to another display showing the Kthar and humans now return to their habitat, the predators moving with evident exhaustion, but also what appeared to be satisfaction. Several humans were tending to the minor injuries sustained by the Kthar, applying medicinal compounds with careful hands while speaking soothingly. "I see now that my initial assessment was incomplete," Byrock said carefully, each word seeming to cost him considerable effort. The reason humans are kept with the Cthar is not solely for the benefit of the Cthar, as I had assumed. It is, as you claimed, a mutual arrangement with unexpected additional benefits for the security of the entire facility. He straightened, professionalism reasserting itself. I must withdraw my initial negative report. However, he added quickly, this does not constitute unqualified approval. The arrangement, while demonstrably effective in this crisis, requires more robust regulatory oversight to ensure continued safety and compliance with modified protocols. Kalen nodded, recognizing the face-saving compromise for what it was. Of course, Inspector. The Zenith welcomes collaborative development of appropriate regulatory frameworks that acknowledge the unique nature of the program. I will recommend that the Apex Symbiosis program receive formal recognition as an innovative security approach, Byrock continued, with appropriate increases in resources and support. His eyes narrowed slightly, including the immediate upgrade of all environmental control systems in adjacent biospheres. Agreed, Kalen said, allowing herself a small smile. Later, after Byrock had departed to prepare his revised report, Kalen stood alone on the observation deck, overlooking the Apex Symbiosis habitat. The artificial sunset bathed the desert landscape in golden light, casting long shadows from the rock formations. In the central clearing, humans and Cthar rested together, the day's exertions evident in their relaxed postures. Dr. Thorne noticed her presence and raised a hand in greeting. Beside him, Kralik lifted his massive head, acknowledging her with a subtle telepathic impression that even at this distance conveyed a sense of satisfied accomplishment. Kalen reflected on the hard lessons of the day, the limitations of rigid control systems, the unexpected strength found in cooperation between seemingly opposed species, the value of empathy and adaptability in facing the unforeseen. The Zenith had nearly experienced catastrophe, but instead had discovered something far more valuable, a new understanding of what was possible when different forms of intelligence found common purpose. From a shadowed corner of the observation deck, unseen by Kalen, Inspector Byrock watched the same scene. His expression remained stern, but his eyes held something new as they tracked the movements of a Cthar gently nudging a tired human researcher toward the shelter of a dome as the habitat's temperature began its programmed nighttime drop. The look might have been interpreted, by a careful observer, as reluctant but genuine respect. Perhaps, he thought to himself, there were more kinds of safety than those codified in regulations. Perhaps there was wisdom in unexpected places. And perhaps it was time for the Galactic Oversight Council to expand its understanding of what constituted proper care, not just for the creatures in their charge, but for all sentient beings seeking to make their way in a complex and often dangerous universe.